Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
3 more people who tested positive for COVID have died in Saskatchewan. One of those is a person in their 80s from our northwest zone. There are 181 new cases, 35 which are in our zone. 3,945 cases are considered active, with 459 in our northwest zone. 124 people are in hospital, with 5 of those in our zone. 21 people in intensive care, including 1 in the northwest. 223 more people have recovered. Last month, the Lakeland region came to an agreement with ID 349 on how the funds will be distributed. Now the Lakeland Métis settlements have an agreement to receive funds to help ID 349. Connor Chan has more.
Well, joining us today is Dave Hansen, the MLA for Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul. Dave, I know when we last spoke, there was an official agreement with ID 349 with the funds. So give us an update on that and also a synopsis of ID 349 for those that aren't familiar with it.
Okay, well, the ID 349 deal that was signed by the 4 municipalities involved the City of Cold Lake, the MD of Bonnyville, Town of Bonnyville, and Town of Glendon. Pretty historical to have them all come to an agreement. They came up with a formula that would work for all of them to distribute the funding. The control of the ID 349 funding was handed over from the province to the MD of Bonnyville for future. So I think it's really good. I've heard nothing but positive from all the communities involved in that decision. And then just this last week, we also announced a total of $3.5 million going to each of the 2 Métis settlements in the area, which is, I think, fantastic. It's a good opportunity for those communities to work on some much needed infrastructure projects, put some people to work in the area. And I don't see any community in Alberta that would think that getting $3.5 million is a bad deal.
You mentioned the money going towards Lakeland Métis settlements. Talk about the process and that and how you got to the point of agreement.
Well, that was a lot of hard work between Minister Allard and Minister Wilson. They worked together. I know when I first approached Minister Allard when she was first appointed Minister of Municipal Affairs, one of the things I said, we need to get this deal together. We had already been working with the 4 municipalities. They had come to that agreement. So presenting that to her that it was important to get that across the line, but also to make sure that we had done something to provide some funding to the Métis settlements. Every community, like I said, in Alberta is struggling with infrastructure deficits right now, and the settlements are no different. So I thought it was very important that she worked together with Minister Wilson, and I was very happy to see them come up with this plan.
Now, with all these agreements in place, is this a win long-term for both sides as well as the entire Lakeland community?
Yeah, it is. It gives some long-term stability, and I'll tell you, the ID 349 issue, ever since it was brought forward, was very contentious it just caused division between my communities up there. So it's really nice to see them all working together now toward a common goal. It's going to be a benefit to the entire region and everybody that lives there, and including the Métis settlements as well. So, like I say, the idea that Elizabeth and Fishing Lake would get $3.5 million to put into some much needed infrastructure is quite important.
Where would the $3.5 million be spent in those Lakeland Métis settlements?
Well, there are some possibility projects. I know that we've had some discussion at Elizabeth. They've got a plan in place, or that's been worked on for a few years, regarding a regional landfill. I think that would be a great way to put that money forward to that. I'm not going to tell them how to spend their money, but I think it would be looking for a long-term goal and some long-term stability for the community would be a great idea, and I think it would be supported by the neighboring municipalities as well. So, but again, if you go out to the settlements, they're no different than any other small town in Alberta. They've got water and sewer problems, roadway problems, housing, all that stuff. So it's I think the toughest decision for those settlement leaders is going to be picking which projects to put the money to work.
Well, Dave, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Now here's Blake Nath with this week's Pet Project.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm joined once again this week with Becca Lawrence from the Lloydminster and District Community SPCA. How are you today, Becca?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. So who do we have here today? Who's this little kitty?
So we're in a condo of kitties, but we're highlighting this handsome dude. This is Orville. He has been in the shelter for probably about 102 days now. So we're trying to find this guy a home.
Oh, wow. So, what kind of personality does Orville have? Like, he seems pretty calm. He's obviously just headbutting your hand for pets. So, like, it seems like he's a bit of a suck-up.
Yeah, he's a big suck, this guy. He can be pretty playful sometimes. So, I mean, we think that he would do really good in any home, especially if you have other, like, cat-friendly cats in the home as well, too. We think he'd do really well. But yeah, I mean, otherwise he's a pretty chill guy, but with his playful moments. So we think that he would probably be best suited even in a home with like older kids, just the, kids that realize that he's just playing kind of thing. But yeah, other than that, he's just a happy-go-lucky guy.
Beautiful. So nice and good with people, nice and good with other animals. He seems like an overall friendly cat. Well, that's great to hear. And how are you doing for cat numbers aside from Orville, Becca?
Yeah, we're not doing too bad. Like normally around this time of year, we have to have another, cat event. So we normally have our Home for the Holidays event. And we didn't have to have that this year. Most of our residents that we have are fairly new to the shelter, and also like we've been calling a lot of people off the waiting list, so we are filling up. But thankfully, just with cats that are fairly brand new to us.
And Becca, I know we just finished up an event, but is there anything that you guys have on the horizon? I know we're skipping our Christmas event, but what's kind of the next one that we're looking forward to, perhaps in the spring or so?
Yeah, I mean, normally I think kind of around the beginning of the year, it's kind of after that event that we typically have, we fill up throughout the next, month or so. So, I mean, normally, I don't think we normally have another one until closer to spring, like you just said there. But yeah, so I mean, we anticipate, March to May is when kitten season will just kind of restart again. So.
Beautiful. All right. So if you guys are shopping for a kitten, there will be lots up in the coming months. So how are you guys doing for dogs at the moment right now?
Really good too. We only have 2 up for adoption on our main floor, and then a few strays just in the back as well. But they should be moving up soon as well. But all in all, I think we only have about 5 dogs in the shelter.
Oh wow, that's wonderful. So who do you have for adoption right now for dogs? Like just as far as breeds go?
Yeah, like Dino, we think is like a bulldog pit bull cross, and then Callie, we're really not too sure about what she is. She's a brindle dog, dark brown brindle, and she's just as sweet as pie.
Beautiful. All right. So if anybody out there is looking for a dog, there are a couple options. Certainly swing by the SPCA. Do you have anything? I know I always like to ask if you got the eclectic animals, so to speak, right? I know you guys every once in a while get in guinea pigs, you get in bunny rabbits, things like that. Anything like that in store right now?
Yes. Yeah, we still have 3 rabbits available for adoption. And 2 guinea pigs that are hanging out here as well too. They haven't been listed on the website yet, but they are up for viewing. One of them just has a bit of an ear infection, so we're just treating him for that right now. And then hopefully by next week they're a bonded pair. So hopefully by next week they'll both be up for adoption.
Beautiful. So keep an eye posted for that, guys. Certainly if you're looking for, something a little different to take home. And just one quick question before we finish off this week, Becca. Are you guys in need of any physical item donations? I ask every single week, and I just love to, check in and make sure that you guys are being accommodated.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still doing really good for everything that we need. I mean, litter is always a big one. We get our pellet litter from Rona. And then we also get non-clumping litter from Walmart. So that's something that we are always going through. So that's something that we're always in need of. And then, I mean, like you always say too, the monetary donations as well. But December has been really good for us as well too, for Christmas being here.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. So obviously a big thank you goes out to the community, everybody who donated this holiday season. I know Becca appreciates it. I appreciate it because, like I said, I always try and look out for these guys in any little way I can. But that's all the time we have for today. So thank you for joining us again, Becca, and we will catch you next time.
Of course. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Manage your waste and recyclables with Quick Pick Waste Disposal. 100% locally owned and proud to serve and support the communities we call home. Quick Pick, the convenient solution to avoid pollution.
The Lloydminster Lions Club has finished up their second annual sock drive, and this year they doubled their donations. Last year, the Lions Club received 325 pairs of socks for their annual sock drive. Now, they more than doubled their goal with 880 pairs.
With all what we're going through here in this COVID-19 situation, I think they're just giving a lot more. I think they just sense that, okay, there's a lot of people in need here. There's a lot of people in need in Lloydminster alone, in the community.
By having their donation bins in different locations, they believe that helped receive more pairs. Bins are at Northern Factory Workwear and the Legacy Centre.
I think it was a very special thing to take part of, especially this year. Any way that we can give back to the community and be a part of it, and not only us, but have a place for other people to come and try to support as well.
Yeah, we had lots of people coming in. What over 200 pairs of socks were brought into the Legacy Centre, so yeah.
The drive went from October 9th to December 20th, and the 880 pairs of socks are going to the Men's Shelter and Drop-In Centre and the Lloydminster Interval Home.
I believe that with the men, women, and children that access the drop-in center, as well as the men that access the men's shelter, I think it means the world to them. We're made aware of the gratefulness from the people that access our services, and they're so humbled, and they're very grateful for what we have to offer, and we're very grateful for what the community stands for. And
these will be put to use throughout the year in 2021 for the women and children that we serve on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, a really big supportive boost for us.
Thorpe Recovery Centre even had their own mini drive that brought in 118 pairs of socks, and Canadian Tire's Jumpstart the Heart brought in 35 pairs. McMahon says the Lions Club plans to have a higher target next year.
So a big thank you goes out to all that has helped us become a great success here in our second annual Lloydminster Lions Sock Drive.
Shelby Clark, Primetime Local News. The Lloydminster Regional Health Foundation was busy in 2020 as the COVID-19 pandemic shook up the year and forced the foundation to respond. We talk with the LRHF CEO about the year and what's to come in 2021.
So I'm joined with Malcolm Radke, the CEO of the Lloydminster Regional Health Foundation. Malcolm, thanks for taking some time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me on, Jace.
Obviously, 2020 has been a challenging year for most, especially the Health Foundation here in Lloydminster. Can you kind of just give me a summary of kind of how this year went and what are some big takeaways?
Sure. Yeah, as we approach the end of 2020, like pretty much everybody else, it didn't go as planned at all. Mid-March there, obviously, as the pandemic news was hitting North America and especially our local community, there was an immediate push right away in our local facilities to make sure they had enough PPE, all the frontline healthcare staff, making sure they were safe and taken care of. So we were happy to accommodate that and support that push for PPE donations and obviously cash donations for things like tablets and hotel rooms for isolating care staff that were unfortunately exposed to COVID positive patients or fellow staff workers. So yeah, just like we were just reacting, I guess, in the spring and asking the local hospital leadership, Dr. Govender and the hospital managers, what do you guys need? Like, we're here for you kind of thing. So talking with them every day and every week, checking in and seeing what they needed. And when visitors were still allowed, or when food donations were still allowed, we were dropping off food at the front door and any well-wishing thank you cards from the community, just making sure the frontline staff and all the isolated senior residents and hospital patients were all receiving those and just passing them along and asking how we could help in any way possible. So that was the spring. And then as we hit the second phase, obviously the provinces have I think wrapped their heads around the infrastructure needs, and now it's just about supporting the humans, the frontline healthcare staff and the patients, making sure everybody's okay, doing things like this, buying the nice to have things like the proper furniture and plexiglass for visitor rooms or portable oxygen machines, stuff that the province isn't really focused on. They're focused on as much equipment as possible in the hospitals and the senior homes to save lives, basically. These extra nice to have things, it really comes down to donors and community supporters and local residents to make sure those things happen. So that's what we're here to do. All things considered, in 2020, we're totally grateful to everybody. obviously a lot of people didn't give as much, but the donations were still there, and we think that's what's important.
Obviously, the Health Foundation wasn't able to put on big fundraisers and different galas and stuff that you guys are used to. But there was still, a big outpouring of support from people giving smaller donations and maybe even just, voicing their support with maybe a sign on their lawn or something on social media. What was it like to be able to see kind of, especially near the beginning of the pandemic in March and April, the outpouring of support from the community?
Yeah, it was great. We would be working away, and then we would get a text from a doctor or from a nurse manager or something like that, just saying, "Wow, who organized this? Thank you so much." And they're just responding to parades of vehicles driving by their buildings and honking their horns and showing signs. And it was just a really good feel good story for all those frontline workers. As you can imagine, they were all stressed in their own way and worried about their own personal safety and taking care of their local residents, local neighbors, and then having to go home at the end of the day to their families and making sure they don't pass on any potential COVID exposure that they had to them. So there was just so many feel good stories. There was a little girl in town who did a bracelet fundraiser and donated, $100 and some off of that. And that goes a long way, right? That's 2 hotel rooms for a night for a nurse that needs to self-isolate and stay safe. And she made that happen. And those stories were just all over the place. Donations of Starbucks cards and Tim's cards, or so many different restaurants in town stepping forward to donate food, basically helping however they could. Lloydminster is always there for us and always there for its charities and its causes. And it was no surprise to me that they stepped up despite everything that was happening with the pandemic lockdowns and with the struggles of the local economy. The support we received this year was overwhelming and certainly appreciated.
And obviously, looking into 2021, COVID is still going to be a part of our new reality. But there's some other things that the Health Foundation is kind of hoping to work towards or look forward to dealing with in 2021?
Yeah, good comment. Obviously, COVID exposed a lot of the vulnerabilities of our local healthcare system, and a lot of pre-existing challenges are still there. The dialysis room in the hospital is still crammed. We still need to get that out of the hospital and into our plaza building downtown. There's still no local mental health stabilization beds, and I think the effect of the lack of local mental health resources has really shown through in this pandemic, and we really need to put even more pressure on the provinces to give us more local supports right here in our community. And this, no matter what's going on, in the world with the pandemic, that hospital equipment doesn't get any younger. It continues to age, and we need to replace things and buy the latest and greatest technology. And those needs are always going to be there.
Here in Lloydminster, dealing with in almost any kind of sector, there's some added challenges being here on the border. What are the challenges you see having to deal with 2 different, health authorities and 2 different provinces when it comes to delivering healthcare to the people here in Lloydminster?
Yeah, that's a big question. There's certainly some strengths and some benefits to being bi-provincial, but I would say in terms of provincial healthcare delivery, it's probably the most challenging sector of the community, being bi-provincial status. You're dealing with 2 different provincial election cycles, 2 different sets of rules on one side of the border or the other for service delivery and for information sharing. The biggest, or I should say, one of the biggest challenges overall is sharing medical information across town between doctors' clinics and the hospitals. And then if you do need to be referred to a specialist in a big city like Edmonton or Saskatoon, making sure those facilities and those specialist doctors receive your patient file as cleanly as possible. The MLAs have done some good work on that for us, and we just need to continue to make sure that it stays top of mind when it hits the premier's desks or when it goes to the legislation provincially. That's the biggest one. And then, being I guess on the edge of the province for both provinces, making sure that we're being viewed as a regional hub, the biggest service center between Edmonton and Saskatoon, and not just a small community of 10 or 20,000 people on whichever side of the border you're talking about. So overall, the municipal election in the city and on the Saskatchewan side, those are all behind us, and there's been good work getting everybody locally coordinated with some of the health advisory committees and concerned citizens groups. We just encourage that dialogue and try to participate wherever we can, think it's really important for local citizens and local taxpayers to make sure they continue to hold their elected officials at all levels of government to task, and just continue to ask what's being improved and what progress is being made on the local healthcare front. Our healthcare facilities, including our hospital, serve 72,000 people in the region. So it's not just your little Lloydminster 30,000 people. 72,000 people have come here for their doctor's appointments. They prefer to get their surgeries done here. They want to make the day trip into town and then head home. So just encouraging, the city of Lloydminster and the other local municipalities, the Chamber of Commerce, just keeping everybody on track of the economic benefit of making sure we have strong provincial healthcare is important.
Well, Malcolm, thanks for taking some time to talk with me today. I really appreciated it.
July 26, 2002 was supposed to be the opening day of the Saskatchewan Summer Games. Unfortunately, just 3 months before the competition, the games were pushed till 2021. Now the Saskatchewan Games Council, City of Lloydminster, and the Lloydminster 2020 Host Society have announced the cancellation of the 2021 game. Evan Kenny has more.
With 208 days until the 2021 Saskatchewan Summer Games, the three host organizations decided to pull the plug on this year's games and instead push them back to 2024. Saskatchewan Games Council Executive Director Mark Bracken says the uncertainties are what's holding the games back.
Current situation we're in with the pandemic and what the uncertainties are in the next 7 or 8 months that lie ahead, and the safety and health of participants is just first and foremost. So none of the parties were comfortable that we could guarantee health and safety based on where we're at with case numbers and such at the current time, and not really knowing what it's going to be like in July of 2021. So
the Saskatchewan Summer Games host 11 to 18-year-olds and over 2,000 athletes, coaches, and officials. The decision to cancel the event was strategically made well ahead of time.
They have, budgeting and planning that they need to do on the front end of the games to pick coaches and prepare athletes and, pick teams and all that sort of stuff. As well, the host society, from a financial management and planning perspective, needed some time to, they had some potential contracts with some of their suppliers that they could get out of if the decision was made early enough.
Similar to other large events canceled this year due to COVID-19, Lloydminster will get the opportunity to host the games in 2024.
Normally, in the spring of 21, we'd be putting out a call to those 15 or 16 communities, inviting them to bid on hosting the 2024 Saskatchewan Summer Games. But what our board decided last week was because of all the time and effort that Lloydminster volunteers has put into this planning of this event, and 3 months prior to it happening this past summer, we postponed, and so we just felt it was fair that for 2024 we offer Lloydminster the opportunity to host these games without going out to the rest of the communities and having a competitive bid process.
Mayor Gerald Albers added, "Together we'll work towards economic recovery, competitive sports, and the potential at hosting the 2024 Saskatchewan Summer Games. The city has until early summer to decide on 2024. Evan Kenny, Primetime Local Sports.
I'm joined here with Chris Humphreys, and he is an international best-selling author. Now, you recently released the third book in your series, the Tapestry trilogy, named The Hunt of the Shapeshifters. So could you give some background into the series?
Sure. So this has been a very interesting and longer running project for me, because I wrote The Hunt of the Unicorn originally a few years back for Knopf, who are the part of Random House, the publishers in New York. And they'd asked me to, I'd written a young adult fantasy trilogy for them. And I hadn't really thought of myself as a fantasy writer before that, but an idea came up and it seemed to work. And so afterwards they liked it, and they said, so what are you going to write next? And I was kind of like, oh, fantasy, I'm not sure. And I was literally sitting in my office like this going, what do I want to write about now? Why do I wear a unicorn on my finger? Because I don't know if you can see that, but there's a rampant unicorn on my finger there. And it's the family crest, right? I mean, I should point out I'm not English nobility. The family crest was created by my great-grandfather, who was a horse auctioneer. But still, he felt he must be a gentleman, so got a crest. Anyway, so a unicorn, what did it mean? I thought, and I started researching it. And the first things I found out was that it was unconquerable, except by a maiden, so that was interesting. And secondly, I found out that it could heal all poisons and cure sicknesses and presumably viruses. So where is a unicorn now? And then finally, I found the amazing unicorn tapestries in New York, which are in the Cloisters, which is part of the Metropolitan Museum, but a separate museum, medieval art. And these extraordinary unicorn tapestries, 6 of them, huge, woven, fantastic art, written in the made in the 15th century. And I thought, wow, that just is so fantastic. And I thought, I've got a maiden, I've got a unicorn, and I've got a tapestry which could be a doorway to another world. And that was the beginning of this journey. And so I wrote The Hunt of the Unicorn, and the tapestries become this gateway to Goloth, land of the fabulous beast, where all our myths live. And in the story, Elaine, who's just a fairly ordinary Manhattan girl, except she happens to be descended from the man who wove the tapestries, and he wove 500 years ago a door in the tapestries. So the unicorn could actually return to Goloth, which is where he was from. He was trapped on Earth. And then 500 years later, the unicorn needs the descendant of the weaver, and he summons Elaine through to the land of the fabulous beast. So that's how that began. I only thought I was ever going to write one, but then a couple of years later, these characters, unless you kill them off, they're still sort of there. And so I thought, fabulous beasts. I haven't done dragons yet. So I wrote The Hunt of the Dragon as a sequel. And then, a year after that, I thought, it's still not done. And I had this idea because I'd found out that dragons, the Eastern dragons, could be shapeshifters and even turn into human beings for a couple of hours. I thought, shape-shifting serial killer dragons, that could be cool. So that's what I wrote.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've released a few books this year, but you've written them in the past. But has COVID-19 had an effect on your writing process at all?
Not really. I mean, writers often are, and I certainly am in lockdown most of the time anyway. Self-imposed lockdown. Writers, it's a solitary profession, really. I mean, people join groups and all that, and it's great. But I'm kind of not one of those joiners. I like to squirrel myself away in my hut and write. So it hasn't changed it hugely. The only thing that has changed is that I've started doing quite a lot of audiobook narration for other people. I'd always done some for myself because I don't know if you know this, but I'm also an actor. So and I've been an actor for years, so it was a natural progression for me. So that's been my, what's the word they always use, pivot? That's been my pivot this year during COVID to start, spending quite a lot of time recording audiobooks.
What are some of the future plans that you're looking forward to in, 2021?
Well, more writing. I'm a bit of I also write historical fiction as C.C. Humphreys. Some of your watchers might or your viewers might know me from that. And I'm going back to writing. I write my fantasy as Chris Humphreys. So I'm going back to writing an adult historical fiction book, which is loosely titled at the moment Sonata at Midnight. And it's I've been planning it for years and written bits about it for years, but it's a World War II sort of romance saga adventure, and loosely based on my parents' story, because my dad was a fighter pilot and my mum was a spy.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. So if anyone is looking to get the books, where can they go?
Well, the present series, the Tapestry trilogy, with the Hunt of the Unicorn, Hunt of the Dragon, Hunt of the Shapeshifters, that's only available on Amazon at the moment. So they can get it on Kindle. And it is, for the next 24 hours anyway, it's free on Kindle, the first book, Hunt of the Unicorn. It's also available as an audio book. You can track that down in any way you get audiobooks. The Hunt of the Unicorn, read by me because of the audiobook narration. For the rest of them, they're usually widely available. If you go to my website, you can see all the books I've written.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Chris.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you for having me, Jasmine.
Now let's take a quick look at your 7-day forecast. Wednesday we're looking at -10 with some cloud coverage. Thursday we're looking at 2, so we're definitely moving some days into the warmer weather with a little bit of cloud coverage and a little bit of sun on Thursday. Friday we're starting off this colder weekend with -5 on Friday with a lot more cloud coverage and a 25% chance of precipitation. Saturday we're looking at -9 and -11 on Sunday, so don't expect to see too much sun this weekend, even though we're all going to be staying inside anyways. Monday we're looking at -8 with a little bit of sun, and Tuesday we're looking at -9 with a lot more sun, so hopefully we're looking at warmer temperatures next week.